Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 6 minutes and 30 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 6 minutes.
I pulled into Nazareth, was feeling about half past dead. I just need some place where I can lay my head. Hey, mister, can you tell me where a man might find a bed? He just grinned and shook my hand. No was all he said.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 5 minutes and 30 seconds.
Take a load for free. Take a load off Betty. And you put the load right on me. I picked up my bag. I went looking for a place to hide.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 5 minutes.
I said, hey, Carmen, come on, let's go downtown. She said, I gotta go, but my friend can stick around. Take a load off Fanny. Take a load for free. Take a load off Fanny.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 4 minutes and 30 seconds.
Load right on me. Go down, Miss Moses, there's nothing you can say. It's just old Luke, and Luke's waiting on the judgment day. Well, Luke, my friend, what about young
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 4 minutes.
A favor, son, won't you stay and keep Annalie company? Take a load off Fanny. Take a load free. Take a load off Fanny. And you put the load right on me.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
He cut me in the fall. He said, I will fix you right if you take Jack, my dog. I said, wait a minute, Chester, you know I'm a peaceful man. He said, that's okay, boy, won't you feed me when you can? Yeah, take a load.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes.
Take a load off Fanny. And you put the load right on me.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
My bag is sinking low, and I do believe it's time to get back to Miss Fanny. You know she's the only one who sent me here with her regards for everyone. Take a load off Fanny. Take a load.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 2 minutes.
You put the load right on me.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Hey, where did we go? Days when the rains came down in the hollow, playing a new game, laughing and running, hey, hey, skipping and
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return in 1 minute.
Our hearts that thumping and you, a brown-eyed girl.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 45 seconds.
And whatever happened to Tuesday and so slow, gone down the old man.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 30 seconds.
Standing in the sunlight laughing, hiding behind a rainbow's wall, slipping and sliding.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 15 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 5 seconds.
He's not just the conservative voice at CNN. He's the last man standing athwart the leftist mob, delivering the fiery truth, surrounded, outnumbered, still undefeated. Fighting for free speech, Western civilization, and delivering common sense for the American people. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Scott Jennings.
The voice of reason is here. Scott Jennings on the Salem Radio Network. If you ever miss this show, grab the podcast. Go to Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast. Look for the Scott Jennings Show. Go to scottjenningsshow.com. You can stream it there every day. We're also on the X platform at Scott Jennings KY, also YouTube, also Facebook. And today, the Scott Jennings Show is brought to you by Ease Total Healthcare. Really excited to have Ease Total Healthcare on board as a new sponsor and partner of the Scott Jennings Show. It is Virginia Day here at the show, 22 minutes past the hour. Audrey Fahlberg of the National Review joins us. She is the original reporter who uncovered the J. Jones text messages. We'll get her update on the Attorney General's race in Virginia. She broke that story a few weeks ago. At 33 minutes past the hour, Winsome Sears is our special conversation today. She is the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. She is the Republican candidate for governor. We'll give her a chance to make her pitch and tell us where the race stands in Virginia as we barrel towards Election Day. First, let's get to the news. Vice President J.D. Vance is in Israel today, working to stabilize and advance the ceasefire agreement between Hamas and Israel. Here's the Vice President.
Or at some point in the next couple of days, I should say, I hope to go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which Christians believe is the site that Jesus Christ was crucified in. And I know that Christians have many titles for Jesus Christ, and one of them is the Prince of Peace. And I'd ask all people of faith, in particular my fellow Christians, to pray that the Prince of Peace can continue to work a miracle in this region of the world. I think that we have made incredible strides over the past week. We're going to have to make a lot more, but I think with your prayers, with God's providence, and with a very good team behind me, I think we're going to get it done. Thank you all. Take care.
Vice President Vance with various meetings in the region and presidential emissaries, Witkoff and Kushner, also along for the ride on this visit. Here is the Vice President expressing optimism that the peace deal will last.
But look, what we've seen the past week gives me great optimism the ceasefire is going to hold. And if we get from where we were a week ago to a long-term, durable peace between Israel and Gaza. There are going to be hills and valleys. There are going to be moments where it looks like things aren't going particularly well. But given that, and given the history of conflict, I think that everybody should be proud of where we are today. It's going to require constant effort. It's going to require constant monitoring and supervision. That's part of the reason that Admiral Cooper and his team is here, is to mediate these disputes, to mediate these disagreements as they come up. But look, right now, I feel very optimistic. Can I say with 100% certainty that it's going to work? No. But you do difficult things by only doing what's 100% certain. You do difficult things by trying, and that's what the President of the United States has asked us to do.
President Trump issued a statement this morning warning Hamas, if you do not adhere to the terms of the ceasefire, the Arab nations involved in this agreement, the president says, are ready to step in and eradicate what's left of the terrorist group. Day 21 of the government shutdown, 3 weeks of Democrats keeping the doors to your government closed. Senator John Thune, the majority leader, took to the floor this morning and said real people are being harmed by this Democratic intransigence.
Thousands of flights have been delayed. Nutrition assistance for millions of needy families is in jeopardy. Military families are turning to food banks in unprecedented numbers. The Democrats are apparently willing to prolong the suffering until their far-left base is satisfied.
House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries said that he is opposing a Senate Republican bill to extend pay to the troops and to some federal workers during the shutdown. Democrats have shut it down, and now they are flatly refusing to pay our military and other federal workers, all to appease a radical left-wing base. It is pathetic political theater. I want you to listen to this fascinating exchange between Jon Stewart of The Daily Show last night and Senator Bernie Sanders. Stewart casting serious doubt on the Democratic position when it comes to this debate over these Obamacare subsidies.
What Democrats find themselves in a place is we've shut down the government to protect subsidies for an insurance marketplace that funnels $800 billion a year into the pockets of all these insurance companies. Have Democrats box themselves into a corner fighting for a system that ultimately, to get the thing that you want, that I think the American people want, they're going to have to abandon. Yes.
Bernie Sanders there. Yes, he says to that interesting question and setup from Jon Stewart. As you can see, health insurance is in the news a lot lately, and the news is never good. Costs are going up, as is the frustration that we all feel whenever we try to actually use our coverage. Runaway health insurance costs are the biggest issue behind this government shutdown. But I actually have some good news about healthcare, and I am excited to share it with you. Our newest sponsor of the Scott Jennings Show is Ease Total Health. Ease is not traditional insurance. It is much, much better. It's a set of benefits you and your family can use from day one with no deductibles and no restrictions on what doctors or hospitals you can choose. Ease offers a range of options to fit every need and every budget, with way too many benefits for me to list them all here. So do yourself a favor and visit this website, easeforeveryone.com/Scott, or call them up at 1-888-EASE-123 and check it out for yourself. Don't wait for the government or the big insurance companies to come to the rescue, because you know they won't. Go to easeforeveryone.com/Scott or call 888-EASE-123 and welcome to Ease Total Health as a prime sponsor of the Scott Jennings Show. Just into the show today, the Trump administration is set to break the all-time record for the amount of illegal aliens deported. By the end of 2025, more than 515,000 illegal migrants have been removed, and an additional 1.6 million have left on their own. This is from the Department of Homeland Security today. Some turbulence, it sounds like, in the president's continued quest for peace between Russia and Ukraine. CNN is reporting that Secretary of State Marco Rubio and his Russian counterpart had a rather rough call. And in breaking news just now, the planned meeting between Trump and Putin that was going to happen in Hungary is apparently off. It is off. That is according to the White House. Some history being made in Japan. They have elected their first female prime minister. Her name is Sanai Takaichi, a self-declared admirer of the Iron Lady herself, Margaret Thatcher. Takaichi is 64, and she has long cited Thatcher as a role model. She was chosen by Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party, replacing former Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, and it ends several months of political turbulence that saw their ruling party lose its grip somewhat on Japanese politics over the summer. Politics in the United States, redistricting wars are continuing. In North Carolina today, the North Carolina Senate has passed a new 2026 congressional map, removing a Democrat seat and drawing in a red seat. So before, the North Carolina delegation was 10-4, and under this map, it would go to 11-3. It appears full passage is imminent. Now a word from our friends at the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. We are living in historic times. After 738 days, the 20 living Israeli hostages, as you know, have been released from captivity, and those who were tragically killed will finally rest in peace beneath Israel's soil. We can praise God for that. In this time of celebration, our good friends at the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews send their deepest gratitude for your prayers and your unwavering support. Thanks to you, the fellowship has provided $300 million in emergency aid since October the 7th, including millions in direct support for the hostages and their families. Of course, the road ahead is a long one. Much needs to be done to restore and revive the people of Israel, but that's what the fellowship does. They're assisting returned hostages and their families with immediate medical, psychological, and financial support. They're also providing mental health care for Israelis of all ages. To find out how you can help, go to ifcj.org. Visit ifcj.org. Coming up after this commercial break, Audrey Fahlberg of the National Review to talk Virginia politics. It's common sense for the American people. Scott Jennings is here on the Salem Radio Network.
If I come out like a dream, will you let me show you what I mean? Will you let me come on inside?
Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 4 minutes.
All I want is a remedy for all of the things ever be. Ooh, I would take a look. Please.
Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
Baby, why you dye your hair? Why you always keep with your mother's bed?
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes.
Tell me, did the other troubles going on you? If I come on like a dream, ooh, will you let me show you what I mean? Will you let me come
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
All I want is a remedy for all of the things that we need.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 2 minutes. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 1 minute and 30 seconds.
I need a remedy, yeah. For what is enemy, you see? I need a remedy for what is enemy. I need a remedy, yeah, for what's enemy.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return in 1 minute.
Oh, you see, I'm finding. Oh, I really want it. You see, I need it.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 45 seconds.
Oh, I feel I just want to sound. I need a
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 30 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 15 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 5 seconds.
Round, round, get around, I get around, yeah, get around, round, round, I get around, I get around.
The fastest growing show on syndicated radio. Welcome aboard. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
This just into the Scott Jennings Show. Chairman Jim Jordan in the House has referred the former director of the Central Intelligence Agency, John Brennan, to the Department of Justice for prosecution. He has sent a letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi claiming that Brennan knowingly made false statements during his interview before the House Judiciary Committee on May 11th, 2023. Jordan referring Brennan for prosecution to the Department of Justice. In just a moment, we'll get to Audrey Fahlberg of the National Review. She's been doing a lot of Virginia reporting. We want to get her take on the political situation there. First, a question: what makes America special? Well, it's not our wealth or power. It's our principles and our people. Our founders launched the great American experiment to unleash freedom and opportunity like the world had never seen. And from the beginning, it has been everyday Americans, just like you, who've taken small steps to move our country forward. Every moment in our history, from the revolution to our greatest inventions to landing on the moon, began with one person taking one small step. Now, in the lead up to America's 250th anniversary, Americans for Prosperity is calling on you to take yours. AFP launching the One Small Step campaign. It's a national call to action, one of the largest grassroots mobilizations in the country to protect our freedoms and reignite the American dream. Every step that you take counts, and you can take part by visiting takeonesmallstep.com. Let's fight for what makes America special by going to takeonesmallstep.com and participate in this national campaign. Let's do it all together. It's Scott Jennings on the Salem Radio Network. Joining us now live, Audrey Fahlberg from the National Review. Thank you for joining us today, Audrey. Now, you broke the original story on the Jay Jones text messages. He's the Democrat running for Attorney General who harbors murderous ambitions in his heart. And yet, since your reporting, despite the outrage, Democrats in Virginia just cannot seem to quit Jay Jones. Since you broke that story, how would you assess the political situation for the elections coming up in Virginia?
Well, thanks so much for having me, Scott. It's great to be here. This race is really heating up. To me, one of the most interesting parts of this story was his campaign's crisis communication strategy. because it suggests how publicly, Virginia Democrats, as you mentioned, nobody's calling on him to step aside. It's a bit too late. His name would appear on the ballot regardless. But privately, of course, Democrats are furious with this situation. So, when we ran the story, I'd of course given the Jones campaign hours to respond. But when I broke my story, he ended up not actually giving us any comment. Went to another outlet instead, and mentioned Trump, mentioned his opponent Jason Miyares, and the words "I'm sorry" never appeared anywhere in his statements, despite him, as you mentioned, saying rather controversial, murder fantasies about his Republican political opponents. But the moment that story broke, his campaign was flooded with a bunch of angry phone calls from Democrats who were confused and angry with why he didn't say the words "I'm sorry." And that's why on the debate stage last week, he had to address the scandal in his opening statement before he could even be asked about it, where he said, let me be clear, I'm ashamed and I'm sorry. But right now, it looks like the AG race is getting much more competitive than it was before. So we'll have to see. Democrats are hoping they can bank on early voting.
Yeah, that's the next thing I wanted to ask you. We've got about a minute here. Early voting starts way out in Virginia, like way out. And they had already had early voting going before you broke the story and Jones took a nosedive. Do Democrats think some of that early voting could save Jones, even though people have soured on him? Did they bank enough votes before the story broke to save this guy?
That's what they're hoping. Early voting begins September 19th. They're hoping that Abigail Spanberger's coattails and the fundamentals of the race, given there's a Republican in the White House, will save them. But it's looking tight, and Democrats privately are furious with him because they view the Attorney General position as obviously being a very important one. So they're not pleased privately with his behavior. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, well, hopefully the people of Virginia do what's right over there and do not elect as the state's top law enforcement officer someone who wishes to murder his political opponents and see his children die in their mother's arms. I still honestly cannot believe what this guy put in a text message. It's really beyond the pale. Audrey Fahlberg of the National Review, thanks for joining us today here on Virginia Politics Day on the Scott Jennings Show. When we come back from this next commercial break, we're going to talk to the Republican candidate for governor, Winsome Sears. She is the sitting lieutenant governor. She was elected 4 years ago on the ticket underneath the current governor over there, Glenn Youngkin. We'll see how it's going in Virginia for Winsome Sears. You don't want to miss it. Come back after this. It's Common Sense for the American People. Scott Jennings on the Salem Radio Network.
Portions of the Scott Jennings Show are sponsored in part by Americans for Prosperity.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return in 1 minute.
Sometimes I feel. Sometimes
You've heard the narratives.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 45 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 30 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 15 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 5 seconds.
You've heard the narratives. Now get the truth. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Scott Jennings here on the Salem Radio Network. And it's Virginia Politics Day. We've got a big governor's race and other down ticket races going on over in the Commonwealth of Virginia. These, of course, have taken on a level of national significance. New Jersey's also going on. And a lot of folks look at these things as bellwethers. Are they really bellwethers? Virginia actually, over the years, has not been all that good of a predictor of what's going to happen in the next election. But that's the kind of analysis you're going to get out of this. The Republican candidate for governor in Virginia had a really interesting moment in her debate with her Democratic opponent the other night. Let's listen to the ad that came out of that moment in the debate. It has to do with those violent text messages that the Democrat candidate for Attorney General had sent. But let's listen to the ad from the campaign of Winsome Sears.
Would it take him pulling the trigger? Is that what would do it? And then you would say he needs to get out of the race? Abigail, you have nothing to say? Abigail, what if he said it about your 3 children? Is that when you would say he should get out of the race, Abigail? You're running to be governor.
Miss Earl Sears.
I mean, we're talking about murder. We're talking about someone's being taken from them. Have you nothing to say about that? Are you not going to address it? Really, you can't go any further. You're a governor. You're supposed to stand up for all the people. Are you saying political murder is all right? Have some political courage. What you have done is you are taking political calculations about your future as governor. Well, as governor, you have to make hard choices, and that means telling Jay Jones to leave the race.
That's a campaign ad from Winsome Sears, and she is our special guest conversation on the Scott Jennings Show today. She immigrated to the United States from Jamaica as a child. She served in the United States Marines. She was in the Virginia House of Delegates. She is the Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth and serving alongside Glenn Youngkin, the governor. Governor Sears, thank you for joining us today. You heard the ad from your campaign. You lived through the moment. How are you feeling about the state of the race for this election coming up on November the 4th?
Well, I don't normally go by feelings, because, I go by faith mostly. But if I'm seeing certain things, then it's looking very good, Scott. Thank you for having me, by the way. And hello to your listeners. Where are my manners? So it's looking very good. The polls that really matter are the ones that people show up to. And what we're finding is that in certain parts where we're expecting better turnout from Democrats, they're just not showing up. They're just not by several percentage points. They are not there. I'm not complaining. You don't hear me complaining. I'm just, thinking, wow, the enthusiasm is not on their side. And when I look at our polls that where people, Republicans vote generally, they're showing up at a clip of 70, 80, up to 90%. We're even besting our 2021 numbers.
So we're doing very well, and I think it's because people see that we really do have the right ideas, the common sense ideas that will advance their children, advance their income, and so much opportunity. You know, when you look at businesses coming to Virginia, they love it. And that is Abigail's problem. She was never where she was never in any of the rooms when we were making these economic advancements.
I ran into Governor Youngkin the other night at an event in Washington and listened to him give a speech, and he was rattling off just an incredible number of statistics about all the ways that he and you have been able to improve Virginia's business climate and education climate over the last 4 years. And of course, you've got a Democratic opponent that you mentioned, Abigail Spanberger, who I think would probably take Virginia in the wrong direction and reverse a lot of these policies. What is the plan? Is the plan to keep it going? And do you have additional economic development and education plans that you plan to use to build on what you and Governor Youngkin have done?
Oh, Scott, it's not a probability that my opponent, Abigail Spanberger, will take Virginia in a totally different direction. She would destroy everything that we've accomplished. I mean, she was never, again, in any of the rooms when we were making these decisions. She was never anywhere around. Oh, wait, that's right. She was in Congress, one of 435. And so she could hide her positions. But now, she's standing out. And you know who was running on our economic successes? Abigail Spanberger said she was going to continue the successes of a Republican administration, except that, Scott, her ideology would not have gotten us where we are. I'm talking about a $5 billion investment that the company Eli Lilly is going to make in Virginia. There were 400 applicants from 46 states that wanted to land them, and they did not. It's as if, Scott, somebody came to you and said, I have a $5 billion lottery ticket. Either you're going to get it or Virginia's going to get it. And Virginia got it. And we've been getting that. We've been winning the lottery time and time again in businesses because they see that we've been getting rid of regulations. We are up to about 91,000 job killing. Doesn't make any sense. Time wasting regulation that did nothing for the bottom line. It doesn't help you to hire anybody. She would put all of that back. She, my opponent, Abigail Spanberger. We have energy policy that makes sense, which is an all of the above approach. Businesses need energy. And Scott, I don't know about you, but when I flick that light switch, I want something to happen. With my opponent, Abigail Spanberger, the only thing she wants, Scott, is solar and wind. Yeah. But wait for it. What if there's no solar and no wind? What do we do then, Abigail? Exactly. Makes no sense. So we need clean coal, oil, nuclear, natural gas, renewables. Yes, we need all of the above. She's already stated that if she wins, which she won't because we have common sense, if she wins, that she is not going to have oil or gas in Virginia. And then what? And then what? She makes absolutely no sense. But she wants to fashion us like Maryland. Well, Marylanders were told this past August to prepare for rolling blackouts.
That's right.
Really?
Yeah, this
really?
energy issue is a real thing, and these progressives who want to take us out of all the reliable energy sources and put us into the unreliable renewables only. That is what their populations will face: rolling blackouts. The grid will not work properly if you go down this road. I think it's smart to highlight that issue. This debate you had the other night, which of course launched this ad that we played at the top of the segment. You had a very strong debate. I think you bested Spanberger. I'm still kind of stunned at her just standing there stone-faced, emotionless, as you appeal to her about this issue of political violence and what's going on underneath her in her own political party. Kind of take us into that moment for a minute. You had an incredibly powerful, emotional moment, and she was just caught flat-footed, which was shocking to all of us.
Yeah, the media, they love her. The mainstream media, they love her. She is one of them, and so they keep putting their finger on the scale for her. They built her up to be this juggernaut. It's this unbeatable, just absolute wonderful sliced bread, wonderful everything person. And then we found out that she's human after all. because we saw she broke. She broke at the debate on very simple questions, which is one of them was, your little girl comes to you crying, saying that she was forced to undress in front of a naked man in the locker room, which, by the way, you voted for, Abigail. What are you going to say to her? What are you going to say? And she said nothing. But remember, one of her little girls was sitting right there in the debate, in the audience. Talk to her. She's crying. Tell her. Abigail said nothing. And then, of course, we went on and we talked about, of course, Jay Jones, her attorney general nominee from the Democratic Party. He's advocated for murder of his political opponent. And by the way, called the wife of his political opponent, a breeder of fascists, little fascists. I mean, but in the Democratic Party, wait for it, Scott, that loves everybody more than Republicans and tolerates everybody more than Republicans. Where are you all? Where is the love that you're supposed to be showing? No love. My opponent, Abigail, made political calculations, and she doesn't have the backbone. She doesn't have the strength of character that we need to be governor.
Now, as you pointed out, Spanberger's been in Congress while you have been down in Richmond with Governor Youngkin making decisions that have enhanced Virginia's economy. Talk to us about how your relationship with Governor Youngkin has worked over the last 4 years and how that has prepared you better than your opponent to be governor for the next 4.
It's easy to serve with a man like Glenn Youngkin because, let me tell you how once we all won our various primaries, because in Virginia, actually, the governor does not select the lieutenant governor. I have to run my own race and win my own race. And so people have to fill in that little oval for me. So I have to make the case for me. But we all ran as a team along with our great Attorney General, Jason Miyares. And the first thing he brought Jason and me together and he said, let's pray. And he prayed for the three of us. How awesome is this man? This is the character of Glenn Youngkin. And so as he was going about, remember the times were very hard. The previous governor was a Democrat, and he had shut everything down. COVID didn't do it, no. It was the governor's response to COVID, because Greg Abbott in Texas didn't shut his state down. Kristi Noem didn't shut down South Dakota, and various other red state governors did not. And so here he was. He had to really open us back up. He had to fight the teachers union to bring the kids back, public schools open. And of course, some of the rogue public schools, they fought him tooth and nail, took him to court. And by the way, my opponent, who now says, our children are last in educational standards. Well, Abigail Spanberg, you were part of that because you said that the governor shouldn't have reopened the schools when he did. You wanted them to be out for a whole another semester after they had had 2 years of learning loss. Yeah. So the governor opened up our businesses, opened up our schools, made sure that we were safe and secure by making sure our law enforcement knows that we care about them and we need them to stay on the job and protect us. And you see the results today.
That voice you're hearing is the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, Winsome Sears. She's our special guest conversation today on the Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network. More with Governor Sears in just a moment. I do want to bring you a quick message from our friends at Relief Factor. And here's another testimonial. Let's meet Bob, 63 years old. He spent 40 years working as a body man and a car painter. After all that work, Bob told us, and I quote, "I could barely walk. I couldn't make it up the stairs. But by day 4 or 5, I felt the change. After 8 days of Relief Factor, I was 75% better, and I'm comfortable now, and I am thoroughly impressed." Don't take it from me. Take it from Bob. We get these testimonials, and our customers at Relief Factor could not be happier. The same is true in the Jennings household. We're using it. My dad loves it. We were talking about it this morning. He brought me over here to the studio, and Dad was like, man, don't run out of that Relief Factor. I'm into that. Here's how you do it. Go to relieffactor.com, call 1-800-4RELIEF. ReliefFactor.com or 1-800-4RELIEF. Try the 3-week quick start. You will not regret it. More with Winsome Sears when we come back. It's Scott Jennings on the Salem Radio Network.
Fighting the left with the best weapon we have, common sense. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 2 minutes. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 1 minute and 30 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return in 1 minute. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 45 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 30 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 15 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 5 seconds.
Fighting for free speech and Western civilization. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Tuesday, October 21st. Scott Jennings on the Salem Radio Network. Breaking news into the show. According to Israel's Defense Forces, the IDF, and this is coming also from the Red Cross, 2 coffins of deceased hostages have been transferred into the custody of the Red Cross and now are on their way to IDF troops in Gaza. This would be a step in the right direction if it turns out that Hamas is upholding the agreement to return the bodies of the deceased hostages. Our special guest conversation today is with the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, Winsome Sears. She's the Republican candidate for governor in the upcoming election in November. She's locked in a close battle with her Democratic opponent. Governor Sears, I want to go back a couple of months. Something happened in your campaign over the summer that I still cannot believe at a campaign event, a sign was hoisted by a Democrat volunteer, and the sign said, "If trans can't use our bathroom, then blacks can't share my water fountain," mixing a couple of issues in this campaign that I am still shaking my head over. Apparently, Democrats putting their adherence to this trans ideology above even their, supposed support of civil rights for Black Americans.
Yeah.
When you think about that moment and what you
Yep.
faced in this campaign, I have to say, it sort of feels like we've moved on from it, but that's still a head shaker for me that Democrats had that in their heart enough to put it on a sign and put it in front of you at a campaign stop.
And feel very comfortable about it, by the way. And that volunteer, and by the way, she helps Spanberger, she was holding that sign in front of about 150 to 200 Democrats for about an hour. So they all saw the sign, and not one Democrat told her to take it down. So I would say they're all complicit. And then when I challenged my opponent, Abigail Spanberger, to say something about that sign, she let her staff speak for her. And it was only after, she was shamed into saying something that Abigail finally came out the next day and said, well, it shouldn't have been done and shouldn't have been done and shouldn't have been done. So remember who I am, though. I'm an immigrant to this great country. And the Democrats say they love immigrants, right, more than Republicans. Well, here I am. And then they say they love, Black people more than Republicans. Well, Abigail, here I am again. So where is the love for me? Of course, it's all political, and they only love you as long as you're on their side. They don't say, think how you want, do, this is a free country, etc. No. Here I am also the first Black statewide who has won, female, and also the first female lieutenant governor. But I am the lieutenant governor of, wait for it, in the former capital of the Confederate States. My God, have we not come any farther than we have? The Democrats keep pulling us back into the past.
We have about a minute to go, Governor Sears. I want to ask you about your experience as a United States Marine. As you mentioned, you're an immigrant to this country. You joined the military. You were in the Marines. How did your experience in the Marines prepare you to be governor of Virginia?
The Marines saved my life. They gave me purpose. They gave me the discipline I needed when my grandmother died, and I thought at 18 years old my life was over. I had nothing to live for. They shaped me up. They reminded me about duty, about responsibility, of purpose, and that I had to dig my own ditch if I wanted respect. And that, yes, I have rank, but rank also means respecting others. It means showing leadership. I tell you, without them, I don't know what my life would have been. And I'm so very grateful to the Marine Corps for all they've done. And it tells me that if something must be done, then you don't wait. You have to go and do it. You have to take the responsibility, no matter what the consequences are. If it's the right thing, it's the right thing. And so that's why I try to speak up for those who don't have a voice. When I was vice president of the State Board of Education, I always wanted to know, what would a parent want to ask of this superintendent? What would somebody who doesn't have the power want to know of this principal? That's what I always want to know. Who doesn't have a seat at this table, and what would they be asking?
30.
So that's why I try to represent everybody, including the people who hate me.
That is Winsome Sears, that voice you're hearing today on the Scott Jennings Show. She is the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. She is the Republican candidate for Virginia. She is locked in a close battle against Democrat Abigail Spanberger. The election is November 4th. Early voting is underway. Governor Sears, you've been a great guest. Thanks for joining us today. More tomorrow. Common sense for the American people every day at 2 Eastern on Salem. I'm Scott Jennings here on the Salem Radio Network.
Freedom to speak clearly with no leftist lunacy. This is the Scott Jennings Show.